Moments ago, President Biden is heading to Europe to meet with NATO and G7 leaders. So what can we expect coming out of this summit? Joining us right now is Dr. Robert Sanders, the chair of national security at the University of New Haven. He is in class, I believe, right now with some students behind him. Doctor, good to see you again. Thanks for being here with us.
Glad to be with you.
So this is something I know you've been talking about with your students right there. What is so important about this meeting right now?
Well, this is the ability for President Biden to sit down with the heads of NATO and talk about what are next steps, what are red lines that we want to have in our back pocket, and what do we want to do if one of those is crossed? How else can we directly help the Ukrainians? Because right now it's individual nations that are helping Ukraine. It's not the body of NATO that is providing them with direct equipment and material. NATO needs to figure out how it wants to step into that box and execute. It's also an opportunity to shore up the engagement that they've had, to make sure that everybody's still on the same page and what that page looks like.
I was reading that Russia has, been indicating they won't rule out the use of some kind of nuclear weapon or something like that. Obviously, it's very concerning for all of the countries nearby. And then today, the U.S. came out and said that they have proof, or they've determined, that Russia has committed war crimes. This is all really setting itself up for a very problematic, an even worse situation, really, is it not?
Well, it is. And as a matter of fact, the last slide that my students and I just discussed was the International Criminal Court and how war crimes evolved from other activities in the world and how they are addressed in the court system. That's a separate piece, but connected to this. The war crimes that Russian troops have identified as being created, someone at some point and some time will have to address them. And the individuals who led those crimes need to be brought to account. Use of nuclear weapons in an offensive manner is a war crime, no matter who uses them or when they use them. That's basically been determined by international courts. So the threat to use them in itself is not a crime, but the threat to use them is in violation of Article 2.4 of the United Nations Charter, which talks about war being illegal and talks about individual states essentially need to leave other individual states alone.
I know there's been a lot of talk about this lately. My final question here, and I hate to put you on the spot, but some are saying we're technically already in what could be called World War III right now. When you talk about everything that's going on in Ukraine, now there's talk that Belarus could potentially get involved, and then we get warnings yesterday that Russia is going to be attacking perhaps our energy systems or our electric companies here in this country. Do you see that right now as a reality of where we are?
Yeah, yes, in part. So here's a concept. When World War II started, the United States waited to get in. I can go back. World War I starts, and 4 years later, the United States gets in. World War II starts, and 3 years later, the United States gets in. In both of those cases, lots of people died in Europe on the way, to the point where everybody said, you know what, we have to go get them because it's going to get worse. So bad on the front end, bad on the back end, bad in between. Pick your poison. It's all bad and it's all ugly. Now, how do you try to avoid that? Well, one of the things that has to happen is that the Russian people themselves have to decide that the road that they're traveling with their leadership is the wrong road. And they have to change leadership. But that's a Russian decision.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Hopefully, I know we're all hoping for good news for sure at some point in this really terrible situation. Dr. Robert Sanders from the University of New Haven, thank you very much for joining us live from your class. I think this is the first time we've done this in all this time.
Yeah.
Some lucky
Hi to
students.
your students.
Exactly. Hi to everybody right
Say
there.
hi, guys.
They're very lucky to have you, by the way. You have a very impressive history. So we want to thank you again for taking your time to join us today.
Well, I'm here training my relief and my replacement. When I was on active duty, I left. I'm now doing this, and somebody has to go take it over.
It's a good place to be. They're very lucky again to have you, sir. Thank you very much.
Bye.